Okay, today's talk is on the principles and definitions of gravionics. Gravionics is the study of the individual and discrete connections of gravity that I call gravions, the mass from which they arise, and the energies that flow through such a system. Gravionics has been in the works for decades. Originally in 1955, when Einstein died, I thought, what a wonderful guy. My aunts were crying at his death, and it was amazing to me how much people loved him and respected his work. And at that point, I was just 8, and I said to myself, if there's anything I can ever do to help him, I want to do it. Well, the opportunity didn't really arise until I got to college, and as I was studying a course called the Philosophy of Science, I began asking a lot of questions, and the teacher couldn't answer them. And I actually spent most of my college career studying this in a special assignment course. Spent far more time on it than anything, and realized over time that no one knew the answers to the questions I was asking. So it kind of put me on my own after a couple of years. So some of the things that I saw was that gravity and mass were always proportional. Anywhere in the cosmos, if you increase the mass, you increase the gravity. If you decrease the mass, you decrease the gravity. So from right then, I knew that E equals mc squared was defective because there's no gravitational component in it, and so there's no way, if you add energy into the mass, for the gravity to expand. And that's where I came up with E equals gmc cubed eventually. The other aspects of gravionics is that all bonds are gravitational between every mass. This starts at the electron up. The particles that hold the electron together have a gravitational component. The electron bound to the atom has a gravitational component. The components within the atom are held together by gravitational components. And these gravitational components extend out throughout the whole cosmos to the very largest structures we can see. One of the things that I thought of to illustrate the point that every bond between every mass is a gravitational bond is driving your car. When you're driving along in your car and you push on the accelerator, you cause g-forces. And so if we was to think about this situation, the human mind makes a decision to go faster. Based upon that decision, chemical and electrical forces transmit the information to the muscles of your foot where you push the accelerator. The accelerator then pushes a series of linkages, at least on old cars, I guess it's computer now, but it pushes a series of linkages that allow more fuel to come into the car. At this point, the fuel comes in, mixes with oxygen, and is burned in a cylinder in a controlled explosion. The energy being extracted from the hydrogen connected to the hydrocarbons. At that point, the connecting rods connect to the crankshaft, and they convert that energy into circular momentum, and that's what propels the car along. So it occurred to me that everything in that pathway, from the thoughts of the human to the electrical energies to the chemical energies to all physical energies, are all in the same gravitational system. And as you accelerate that car, every component of the car feels that acceleration. Every molecule, if you paint it, the paint knows the gravitational forces. If you just put dust by electrical static connection, they also know the forces that are on that car. And so these forces, I believe gravitational connections connect every single mass that exists that we can know about. Also, one of the premier things is gravionics is made of individual and discrete connections. And these connections form nature's coordinate system. It's how she keeps track of things. In science right now, they say we can never know the exact energies and state of anything because once we touch it, we change all of that. But I would say that nature knows the exact energies and positions of everything, and she does it through the gravitational system. And one of the last things is that, and I need to say that in this coordinate system, nature has two things that she has to transmit between different masses. And that's the size of the mass. There is no 17th particle that's a God particle. All gravitational energies are transferred between all masses by the gravitational system. So the gravitational system is responsible for instantaneously transmitting the size of each mass to any other masses it connects with, and also the potential difference. If you look all the way from the electron to galaxies, we see currents flowing, and for a current to flow, there must be a potential difference, and the potential difference must be known across the circuit. So that's the job of gravity. And also the last thing that occurred to me is that gravity and mass must be two aspects of the same thing. In the equation E equals gmc squared, energy is constantly moving back and forth between these two variables in real physical systems as they evolve through the world. So here's the principles and definitions of gravionics. Gravionics is a philosophical model. So on philosophy, what we should do is try to arrive at the most basic and primitive way of understanding anything that describes the most with the simplest models. So there's three assumptions that I've taken in the formation of the gravionic model. One, there is a reality. Two, we can know the reality through our measurements, our senses, and our minds. And three, the reality is the same throughout the whole cosmos. As we look at all the systems, the galaxies far, far away, they all appear to follow the exact same rules that we follow. And also science pretty much assumes these same things whether they realize it or not. So from that, I've developed three principles that I think that govern gravionics and also how the universe and the cosmos works. So the first principle is that the minimum condition for existence in any universe is identity and relationship. If we have a universe here, and it's gravitationally defined by, say, this body, and this thing exists, but it exists and it has no connection, then in essence, it is not a part of that universe. So I think this is where equals gmc cubed is required, because we need to combine those two things together. So the minimum condition for anything to exist is identity, which is represented by mass, and relationship, which is represented by the connections of gravity. Those two things are necessary for anything to exist in any universe. If it just has a mass and no gravitational connection, then it doesn't exist within that universe. So from that, I developed a few things that I think follow from the principle, the first principle. So all of reality is composed of energy. Some of that energy represents as pure energy that we see. Some of it represents as mass and represents itself as gravity. Einstein left gravity out of the equation, but everybody knows that gravity has energy. And I'm showing, I think, that what the relationship is. The second thing is gravity is the only force needed to hold mass together. Right now we have in science there's a whole bunch of different bonds, like the electron bond, and that's not considered a gravitational bond, but gravionics considers it a gravitational bond. And also we have things within the nucleus that hold it together. I believe all of those are gravitational, and the strong force, I believe, is actually a part of that. The strong force keeps things apart. But the closer I've noticed in nature that these come together, the larger the space that's defined by that mass. So I think there's some relationship between the gravions that keep things apart, which is called the strong force, and the connections of gravity that define the gravitational space of any real physical system. Gravity is made of individual and discrete connections. Science has before has considered gravity a sheet. Their favorite thing to do is to get the rubber sheet and put a ball in the middle of it and say this represents gravity. No, gravity is not a sheet of anything. It's individual and discrete connections. This is evident when the moon orbits the Earth. Individual molecules of water are raised by the individual connections of the moon that grab them and pull them up. So gravity is made of individual and discrete connections. I believe that all energies in the real world transfer to the connections of gravity. This would include all the radiation energies and also the spiritual energies that flow between human beings as they interact. And the distribution of energy, as we said before, is represented by the equation E equals gmc cubed. All of this is discussed in my book in a little more detail, and my book is available free on my website if anybody wants to download it. Principle number 2 is any coordinate system must define itself faster than the fastest thing which moves through this system. We've done a previous video on the speed of gravity where I've given some examples, but basically orbital calculations can't have any delay or they are incorrect. Something called entangled particles that is all through science right now. It's two particles connected by a gravion. When something touches one, the other knows about it instantaneously, no matter how far apart they are. So I believe that, that nature's coordinate system is this gravitational system, and as things are moving through it, it must form itself faster than the things that move through it. I proposed in my book that it's at least c squared, but I think the evidence now is the speed of gravity is infinite. And so gravions, I believe, propagate, connect, and disconnect at the speed of gravity, which is infinity, which means no time is involved in their production, their connection, or their disconnection. And the third principle is that reality is infinite. To propose that, then there must be cycles that allow for an infinite cosmos. So what I proposed was the largest cycle. It's called a Big Bang event, where mass accumulates in black holes until it reaches some point that it can no longer hold that energy. It comes apart and is available for use in future systems. But this never includes all the cosmos. It's always only just a small portion of it, while the rest of the cosmos goes on. So I believe that the cosmos is infinite in both space and time. And so, as a summary, the gravionic model says that all connections are gravitational connections. They occur at the speed of gravity, and that all energies pass through this system, including spiritual energies. And then what I would like to do now is go over the definitions, and I haven't taken the time to write them on the board, but I would just like to discuss them. I'll read them and discuss them with you. Again, these are in my book if somebody wants to actually look at them. So the first definition I've made is that energy is defined as the substance of the cosmos. When you're defining a whole system, a series of things, the first definition is pretty much the hardest, but it looks like to me that everything in the cosmos is made of energy in one form or another. So the first definition is energy is defined as the substance of the cosmos. Mass is defined as that part of the energy of the cosmos which represents identity, those things that exist. While gravity is that portion of the energy that defines the relationship between things that exist. Gravions are defined as the connections of gravity. Reality is defined as all mass and the associated connections of gravity and all energy which is stored or moved through those systems. Space is defined as the accumulated connections of gravity. We see all the way from atoms on up that even in an atom, the masses are very, very far apart. In proportional size, they're as far apart as the planets are to the sun. But that makes space, and the space is made by that atom, the gravions that connect within it. And so that goes all the way through galaxy clusters. Space is defined by the connections of gravity between the masses. Time is defined as the changing of gravions. Under gravionics, time is not the fourth dimension. It's actually the changing. They're instantaneous in their connections, but mankind perceives their changing as the passage of time, as a series of events. Life is defined in those physical systems which use gravions to store information about reality. That's basically in DNA. Here's a DNA molecule, and it knows things about the reality outside of itself, and it changes itself and lives through this reality. So that's my definition of life, is those things, those physical systems which use gravions to store information about reality. Okay, love is defined as the actions of a sentient being whereby they give more energy than they take and they make more connections of gravity than they break. In any relationship between two people, there's a choice of how we use our energies. We can either be loving and kind to each other and give of our energies, or we can be ugly and take of their energies. I think all of you know someone who's an energy hog or an energy black hole who sucks energy from everyone around them. That's not one of the aspects of love. So spirituality is defined as the actions between sentient beings whereby the energy transfers are positive and loving, that the beings understand these energies and that we transmit them in a way that benefits both of us. C is defined as the speed of light, a cosmic constant. Infinity is defined as the speed of gravity, another cosmic constant. God is defined as a progression towards order. Gravionics doesn't make a statement about God. It describes the energies, not where they come from. But what it has done is I've substituted the concept of order for those that do not believe in God. If we look, we see an ordered cosmos evolving around us. We see that we are ordered beings, and I would simply state that it is the duty of every ordered being to increase the order of a cosmos they already see that's increasing in order. Real events are defined as those events that have connections of gravity and exchanges of energy. For instance, a prayer between two people, you would have to connect gravitationally with them and give energy to that person, and that person would have to feel that energy for that event to be real. So all real events involve the connections of gravity and exchanges of energy, where we're talking about planets or other things. The truth is defined as the real, not the perceived connections of gravity. Gravionics says that the human mind is a gravitational device that's creating a model of the reality outside itself. And this reality that it creates is always partly true and partly false. If it's really false, then we call that person insane because they can't deal with reality. You have this model in your mind, and that model may say, well, my friend did something wrong to me. So that model is real in your mind, but if the friend actually didn't do that, then that model is not an accurate description of reality. The friend may have never even thought about doing that particular thing. You may have just made it up. So reality is really defined as those real connections of gravity, not the ones that are formed in your mind that may not accurately reflect the reality outside your mind. And that was the definition of truth. A miracle is defined as those events, real events, where the infinite possibilities overcome the finite probabilities. One of the examples I like to use is my meteorite from Mars. It appears that it's a miracle because there's so many unlikely events happened. It was involved in 2 volcanic flows over 50 million years. It was involved in water on the surface of Mars. It was somehow knocked off the surface of Mars and sent to Earth, and somehow landed within a mile of where I was sleeping and 15 miles of where I was born. And I guess a lot of people think it's a coincidence that I prayed all my life for a meteorite, but it appears to be a miracle to me. The infinite possibilities overcame the finite probabilities. And finally, a universe is defined as those physical systems which orbit around a common center. Unlike today's science, where they confuse a universe and cosmos as a thing, same thing, the cosmos is defined as all that exists. Our universe is a Milky Way galaxy and those things that revolve around the Milky Way galaxy. And the largest physical systems, universes, are super galaxy clusters. So thank you.